This morning I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, pen testing versus source code analysis. This has always been a topic, that I've had to focus on because, for a long time I was always against source code analysis because I always looked at it from a business perspective. And every time you talk to a salesman, they just tell you, all right, it's this much per lines of code, and most apps are over 1 million lines of code. All right, so who am I? My name's Tom Ryan. Okay, I've been on the New York Metro chapter. Tom Brennan and I started up the New York Metro chapter by merging New York and New Jersey together about 2 years ago because we saw it the most beneficial for everybody. I'm also one of the contributing authors to the Owasp Testing Guide version 2. I do a lot of work for a company called Layers Consulting. If you're going to his next meeting, you'll see what that whole company is all about. I have a lot of passions beyond AppSec because I look at security as like a full 360. When I say a full 360, I'm not talking about fortified 360. I'm talking about, network testing, wireless, application, physical security, because they all intermingle within each other. On the side, IT gets kind of stressful, so, when times are tough, everybody knows me, I like to go out and play a good game of paintball. So what's this talk about? All right. This talk about is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of, pen testing, application scanning, and source code analysis. You'll have every salesman out there saying their tool is all you need, okay? What are the best approaches? How do you go about doing your InfoSec program, your application security within your organization? And what my whole focus is to make the most optimal, cost-effective solution for everyone. Okay, the evolution of app testing. How many of you here are app testers, app pen testers? Anybody? All right, I'm sure you've realized since it got really big, like in '99 till now, how much it's changed. And that's why Owasp has these conferences and their monthly meetings, is to try and keep you updated to the newest exploits, how people are doing things, give you a better understanding not only from a tester point of view, but a developer point of view, and also a managerial point of view. All right. It's annoying me. Oh. All right, so what are some of the tools out there? All right. As far as application scanners go, the three big ones you always see on the market everywhere you go is always Watchfire, WebInspect, and Hailstorm. Acunetics and NTO Spider, they're much smaller companies that you see out there, and a lot of the smaller mom and pop shops use them. And then the Owasp tools, you have WebScarab and WebGoat. Does anyone know why I put WebGoat up there? A lot of times people will go out there to say, oh, I use Owasp tools testing, and I test my tools with WebGoat. All right? WebGoat's a training tool, all right? So you're not testing any applications with WebGoat. You'll also see in some of the scanning tools, they'll use WebGoat as their example. This is how you find this and this and this vulnerability. Out there you'll see all different types of testing methodologies, okay? The noob testing methodology, all right? That's what I like to call the guy, yeah, I'm a pen tester, I could do this, I could do that. What do you do? Well, I got a copy of Spy Dynamics and I just turn it on and I let it spider the app and find the vulnerabilities for me. That's the noob tester. Because there's a lot more to it than that. A lot of them don't even realize some of the features that are in the tools. Very few people take the time to actually learn the tools and understand what they can really do. Then there's the whole consulting methodology. All right, there's a whole testing guide, like Owasp testing guides. A lot of companies will follow the Owasp testing guide and say, all right, this is how we do this, this, and this. This is how we perform this type of attack. Here's this type of exploit. Corporate methodology. Corporate is all about standards, okay? How do we do these tests and comply with this standard? Sometimes it's not the most effective way, and sometimes it is, because a lot of it's just based on risk. All right, the Department of Defense approach. Anyone here with the DoD or any branch in the military? No. Their version is pretty much the noob testing methodology. Let's just run the scanner and we'll be good to go, because you know why? We have so many apps, we have no time to do a real test, so we'll just report what the scanner tells us. All right, as far as source code analysis, I haven't worked with any DoD company that does it. Here's an example of Fortify. Just to give you a basic example of everything that's found within source code analysis. All right, you see this is pretty much a standard of what you would see. All right, that many criticals, that many highs. Does anyone know why that's that high? Those numbers, there's a lot of false positives you have to go in and filter out. A lot of people don't, you'll hire a consulting company, they'll come in, they'll generate a report from this and say, here, this is what you have to fix. Okay? It's like you paid me, here, I paid you $25,000 for a 25,000 page report. That's useless to me. Okay, tools for the trade for source code analyzers. Everybody knows you have your IDE. You have to use your IDE for all your development. And what a lot of the source code, the two big source code scanning tools, Fortify and Ounce, what they try and do is make IDE plugins to make it more efficient. Spy Dynamics also has a much cheaper version where it's like point click and we'll tell you what to fix. Is Devon spec. Does it work? No comment. Okay. One of the things I wanted to focus on is how do these tools compare with the Owasp top 10? All right. A lot of people say they go by Owasp top 10 whether they're members or not, and most people couldn't even tell you what the top 10 is. PCI uses the old version of the top 10, and what, PCI 1.1 came out what, a year ago? So there's automated web scanners will go through source code analysis and black box application pen testing. So if we go through cross-site scripting, all right, basically an app scanner, I'm being nice and gave it a B- because it's all signature based. All right, I'm not saying what scanners are better. If you want people's opinion, you can always go look up on SAM8 from NIST as to what they rate scanners. But you also have to realize every scanner is going to work differently in every environment for every application. The usefulness of them is probably about 20%. So whenever you're using an app scanner, it's going to find you at best 20%, at most 80% false positives. Source code analysis for cross-site scripting. The reason why that's left blank is basically because, yes, it's going to find cross-site scripting. Problem with source code analysis tools, they don't have fuzzers built in. We'd like to know what goes through. It's just going to say you can dump code, you can dump any type of injection in this parameter. So yes, it is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. Pen testing, all right. It all depends on your knowledge out there of what, how to do a cross-site scripting, how to do a cross-site request forgery, and a response split, all those different types of attacks. A lot of people, like for cross-site scripting, they'll go and use Arsenic's reference guide. All right. Injection flaws. Okay. All right. Injection flaws. App scanners, they need a lot of improvement on SQL injections. This is probably the largest false positive you'll find in an app scanner is, on SQL injections. Can they actually perform them? Most of the times, it's just code that's written to do a redirect. It's all based on your HTTP response code. Okay? They'll tell you they have all the support for AJAX and Web 2.0. No, they really don't. The other thing is no command injection. So if you're trying to do a command injection through an app scanner, it's not going to happen. Can anyone tell me why? Anyone know why, since we have so many pen testers? Most of the times it's because you're doing an outside app assessment, and it all has to do with the natting of IP addresses is one reason. Other reasons, maybe they don't have the best coders. The automated code scanners, all right? I was talking with Dennis Cruz about this one yesterday. You know, he's showing me how great the new Ounce tool is, and I have to say it kind of impressed me. And I said, you know what, everybody here would love if you put a fuzzer into this code scanner, all right? Here you got Ounce with their code scanner. If you threw a fuzzer in there and knew all the different types of attacks you could do with the parameter, it's a lot more effective.
You're talking about something other than static code analysis? Other than
No, actually it would, because what you're looking for code, so it all depends on what you're looking for in the code analysis, okay? Are you looking for particular parameters that can go through? Are you looking for, you know, are you looking for, you know, a max lengths, this, that, the other thing? You know, it makes it a lot more effective.
Yeah, but still, I mean, static analysis is about analyzing the code. You never run the code. It might not even be built. So it might be impossible to fuzz it. You need to build a system to be able to.
Actually, that's the way the
source code analysis, you need to do it on source code. You're not building it.
most of them actually build it out when you do the testing.
Yeah, that might be, but they're still just analyzing the code. They're not running anything.
Okay. You know, everybody has their own different opinion on that. Okay. And then the other problem with injection flaws, it all relies on, you know, the individual tester's knowledge. Every tester has their own weak point, has their own strong point. You look at some testers, their weak points are, you know, wireless. Some are applications are their strong point. Some are networks, and you know, the different things. Like an example I'm trying to talk about. All right, you have an application out there. All right, how many of you went to Black Hat? All right. The reason why I'm bringing this up is in most testing methodologies, it just tests the application. All right. It all depends on the company, this, that, the other thing. You know, when I was going back to consulting methodologies, every consulting company does a test a different way. Some will just do the application itself, okay? Others will do the application and the host. You know, they'll test load balancing, everything just for that host, see if they can hit the app servers, see if they hit the database servers, and then, you know, you just take one step further and actually test the DNS servers, all right? Because if there's a DNS cache poisoning, you can do redirects, all kinds of weird things like that. Malicious file execution. Some examples of malicious file execution were about 2 months ago. Everybody started getting all these emails from CNN, MSNBC, saying, here, read the latest news, click here. You would click there, and guess what? It'd say you have the wrong version of Flash. So if you were to click on upgrade Flash, there would be a malicious execution, and your machine would be taken over by a botnet. That would be an example of a malicious execution. And that's something that, you know, whether you're running an app scanner, code scanner, sometimes if you're pen testing, you can tell, but that's not something you'll always find. Indirect file object references. Best part about this is, I mean, the ideal way for doing direct object references is source code analysis. It's the best way. It basically builds out a whole map for you for where all the controllable data is within the application. Cross-site request forgeries. App scanners will not find them. Source code scanners do not find them. Pen testing, it all depends on your methodology, your approach, you know, what tools you have planned. Do you use tools? Is everything manual? Are you just using a proxy? Information leakage and improper error handling. Information leakage and improper error handling is huge, okay? Why? All right? Information leakage gives you passive information, like say about the application itself. You know, you going through your web app, you have your web server headers. Web server headers a lot of times will tell you versions of software on there. All right, that's passive. You learn the exploits that way. You don't even have to, half the times you don't even have to try an exploit, you know it's going to work. Improper error handling can always lead to things like, okay, there could be a possible SQL injection there. All right, from the SQL injection or cross-site scripting. Stuff you'll see a lot in applications, like would be their error pages. All right, some crazy developer came up with this crazy idea that said, you know what, I'm going to put all the text for the error page in the URL string. Okay, so you'll look at these applications, you'll see this long URL string, and you'll say, hey, look at that text, that looks familiar. I'm reading it right here on the page, let's play with it. You'll go in, you'll do an iframe, you'll do whatever you want. Iframes, cross-site scriptings, possible SQL injections, log file corruption, if it's actually logging stuff into the web server. Broken authentication and session management. All right, this is one of the big ones I found out there from doing all different types of testing. And this is where it comes down to what's your testing toolkit. App scanners, they find minimal authentication problems. You know, they'll find some cookie problems. But they don't find things like different policies. How many times does it take to lock out? You know, can you do brute force attacks? It doesn't get to look into like the cookie, like what types of encryption are they using in the cookie? What types of encryption are they using in hidden fields? One of the bugs they had in SiteMinder used to just base64 encode your password in a hidden field. Okay, that's something none of these would pick up on. All right, your pen tester would pick up on it most likely, hopefully. If not, I'd give them a reduction in pay because it's something quite simple. What else? Session management. Okay, how random are your sessions? Okay, if you're in a .NET application, what information is stored in view state? A lot of times people don't encrypt view state. You view the view state and you'd be surprised all the information you have in there. Yeah, I've seen usernames, passwords, everything stored in view state. Insecure cryptographic storage. All right. Now this can be taken up many different ways. All right. App scanner, autocode scanner, pen testing. But what about, say, you know, how are you handling your backup tapes? All right. And that's when, you know, our whole risk assessment comes into place. All right. App scanners do not find almost no insecure cryptographic storage. What it may find is access to, say, a config file from a specific type of third-party application. And if you could download that and view the configuration files. There was one time I actually found the encryption key in a config file. Autocode scanning. Basically, the auto scanners, it's going to find out how you're storing your information. If you're exporting all your data, to the hard drive, what's going to be on that hard drive? Is that data on the hard drive encrypted? Okay? Because a lot of times, if it isn't, somebody breaks in or there's a directory traversal in an attack, you can compromise that data and it's pretty much in the clear. Other things you may have seen out there is connections into Access databases. For some reason, some people feel the need to use Access on the internet. I have no clue why. I really don't. I actually found one last week and had fun because guess what? All they did was MD5 all the passwords and store it in a table in Access. I mean, Chris and I had access in like, I don't know, 15 minutes. Pen testing, all right? Just like the app scanner, pen testing is going to find, minimal information on insecure cryptographic storage, because it's basically going to be the same thing. It's going to be the output from the scanner. What are the possible files? You'll walk through the application. You'll look, see where all the different links go. What's behind that link? What's in a PDF? But if you go through the whole pen testing process, sometimes it's worth it to actually open the PDF, not just go, oh, it's a PDF, I'm not going to look at it. Because we've looked at PDFs before on servers. One was a copy of a pen test report, okay? So that would be a problem. And all it did was use it used a PDF password. So PDF passwords, you know as well as I do, just put it on the other laptop and let it crank away and brute force it. Other ones, we found credit reports in clear text, okay? And that comes down to file access also, which we'll be getting into in a minute. And these are things you want to pay attention to. Why? What's going on nowadays? Everybody's getting compromised. How many sites are hacked on a weekly basis, and how many millions of people? I think the last record was over 300 million people have had their credit information stolen over the past 3 years. So it's pretty much the population of the United States.
What did you use to crack the password?
Alchemsoft makes a whole suite of tools. Yeah, and it pretty much ties into rainbow tables. So if you have a rainbow table, you can tie it right in, and it'll pretty much brute force or do whatever type of attack you need to do. Any questions so far? Insecure communications. What do we mean by insecure communications? All right, insecure communications is pretty much a full 360 scope. We're not just talking over port 80, because not every application is an external application. A lot of applications that are compromised are internal applications, okay? So what are you looking for? How do you log into, say, how do you log into your Exchange server or your OWA server, okay? That's the perfect example. Are both port 80 and 443 open, so can you bypass it or force people to bypass it? Because if they're using basic authentication or if they're using NTLM, it's pretty much over and done with pretty quickly. Basic, you'll probably, it's a 1, 2, 3 process. Other things you want to look at, how's the information being transmitted, from the database to the web server? Is it encrypted from the database to the web server, or is it in the open? A lot of times that's a good way to capture credentials from an internal point of view, all right? And that's why, from my experience, the best approach to this whole process is not just saying, okay, I'm gonna go in and do an app assessment. It's like, I wanna do an everything assessment. I wanna combine all the network devices that attach to that application. I wanna hit all the services, DNS services, mail services. Reason being, how many of you have ever tested a medical application? Okay? You hit a medical application, here's something that's gonna shock you. Or, like say you go and get your MRI or whatever tomorrow, guess how they transfer that information? A lot of times you'll see it over SMTP. So from doctor to doctor, it's going SMTP over the internet. All right, failure to restrict URL access. We were going back to this before. A lot of times, what are the different purposes of this? Okay, your mail servers. All right, if you're using Microsoft Exchange, it's always a /exchange. Okay, can you go beyond that? Can you put /exchange Tom Ryan and get access to my email? Because the security features aren't configured properly. Can you go directly to an email without logging in? And that's the whole part. And the other problem with that is all system cache. Okay? How many of you used VeriSign before? VeriSign tokens for authentication. All right, one little trick with VeriSign tokens, it always goes to a file called sophia.exe. All right, stored in your browser cache. All right, guess what's in that browser cache file? The exe file is not an exe file in your browser cache. If you were to view that, your username will be in there, and your password's in there in a hidden field. Okay, and that's stored in your browser. All right, so if somebody compromises that, the only thing left is to find out who you are and compromise your token. And then you pretty much have complete access. Other examples are restricted URL access when I was talking about credit reports before. If you're in the banking industry and you're doing loans, and I don't know how many people will be doing that much longer, but if you're doing loans, it's like, if you're doing loans, a lot of times you'll have a process where you're going to write the salesman will write a credit report to the file server after filling out an online form, and it's stored on that file server. All right? Do you have a process of actually deleting that stuff randomly? What is your process for, what's the process for actually naming the files? Okay, a lot of times you'll go in and you'll find this stuff sequentially. Perfect example of that would be banks. Okay, you go into banks. How do you get your checks back nowadays? A nice little printout. All right. Have you ever actually seen the interface to view the checks? It's a Java applet. Okay, a Java applet with a little proxy. You'll see every file that's on that server. Okay, every image of every check on that server is usually stored sequentially. All right, and it's direct access. It's not blocked off. Okay, because Java has an applet has no session state, and it makes life a lot easier. The bad part about it is, when you're doing pen testing, you get such an addiction that everything you look at, you're just going to sit there. All right, I'm going to buy this. All right, let me see what it's doing. You'll look at a browser plugin. There's all different examples. All right, I'll give you all a hint, but don't do anything bad. How many here people are mad at me for that McCain sticker and are going to vote for Obama? Nobody? Okay. Go to voteforchange.com. Okay? Type in your information. Okay, first of all, he has no privacy policy, so you will get emails. All right? So you are going to get emails. The second thing you want to look at is, hey, why is all my information stored in hidden fields in this whole application? And then you'll start to find out that there's what? No, you'll find out all your information stored in hidden fields. You'll also find a unique identifier for every voter's ID in there. All right? So.
Are you suggesting that McCain or Obama?
No, I'm not going to lie. McCain has his own issue. On the McCain site, he has his own issue. I'll tell you what, don't go down there and say that in front of the females in the booths. You'll be in a lot of trouble. Because every female at every vendor booth is like, I really want Palin to win. So.
But she's hiding.
Well, it's funny because we're going to talk about that one in a minute too. All right, so going forward, what are some of the vulnerabilities that are not found, in source code analysis, in scanners, application scanners, all right? You're not going to find logical vulnerabilities, okay? Logical vulnerabilities are probably the biggest issue you will ever have. A lot of times, whoever's here in charge of like an IT security company, you'll sign off to have an application tested, okay? Most of you don't know every piece to that application, okay? So there's a single sign-on solution, which is a different server, which 90% of the times isn't in a list of things in scope to test. which is usually where there's biggest issues because information's going from one server to another server and back to another server. All right. Other things, rewards points. If any of you work for banks and you have rewards points, tons of information leakage there. All right, host and system vulnerabilities. How many of you actually test your host in an app pen test? Nobody? You don't do anything. And network service vulnerabilities, like I said before, DNS, SMTP, all different servers like that. Now an example, go ahead.
You mean they're not found by any of these three or not found by the tools?
Not found by the tools that were in question, okay? If you're using
The
network,
testers do find it.
oh, they do find it. They do find it. But the logical vulnerabilities all comes down to who your tester is,
Yeah.
okay? Because lately you'll see a lot of what the corporate policies are and the consulting methodologies as to how they hire people. They'll hire junior people, okay? And because of the demand, and they don't want people to see junior on a title, within 6 months, all of a sudden that guy's a senior. All right? I don't know. Senior scanner clicker, yes. All right? I don't know, because I look at it this way. I've been a senior consultant for 3-4 years now. All right? And I still don't know everything. I mean, I used to hate source code analysis. Hate it, hate it, hate it. I'm like, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money. The first approach I went about it was, I'll do a manual pen test, I'll do a black box test, and whatever looks like it could be a potential overflow or anything like that, then I'd have some source code guide, you know, go and attack that piece. But then I had one particular application that wanted me to do it just the reverse, right? They wanted me to go in and do a source code analysis. Okay, we went in with a nice team of 2, did the source code analysis, and then we did the pen test to validate everything. Because it wasn't finding things like in view state, different things like that. And I have to say it was probably one of the best pen tests that we've ever had. Overall, the most findings, and also it made it a lot easier to remediate every vulnerability going at it from both ends. All right. So, next one's probably going to get me in a little trouble. Okay. An example of a logical vulnerability. All right. No, I'm not going to do the Sarah Palin email hack. We have 300 Secret Service agents in the building. You know, I would still like to go home tonight after this is over with. Other issues you have are like password reset vulnerabilities. How many times you reset your password in an application, it emails it to you. Or it emails you a link that never expires. All right? Other ones, attacking DNS servers. Dan Kaminsky proved that one at Black Hat. All right, cache poisoning, you could fake any site. The one I'm going to show you now is an airline lookup attack. I kind of blurred out the name of the airline because of certain reasons. It was one I found just playing around one day. You know, you get bored, you're playing with forms, stick in other people's names and information that you Googled. Here it is. All right, so I picked my prime victim being my ex-girlfriend. Okay? I said, I wonder what she's up to. All right? So I typed in her info. Stalker. Thanks, Tom. So I type in her info after I logged in. I'm like, let's see what happens. Guess what? All I needed to know was her flight number. Flight numbers you can Google every day, right? Because it's the same flight number, same time, almost every day. So all you have to say, hear someone say is, yeah, I'm coming around this time on this date. You can look them up. Look what you could do when you look them up. Okay? You can modify their information. You could change it. You could change your seat. You know, you're mad at your ex-girlfriend, you put her in the back by the toilet. You know. If you're really mad, you know, I could have just clicked cancel and she would have been stuck in Russia. So, So these are the type of logical vulnerabilities that you have to look out for. All right. This is why when you go about it, QA testers, you know how QA testers always have a whole list of test scripts that they want to run? You have to put the same methodology in your head when you're doing a pen test. What do I want to do? Do I want to change numbers? Okay. Do I want to charge my hotel internet fee for $14 to Jeff's room? Or do I want to charge it? You know, it's all different things like that. A lot of times you just find everything in URL strings or hidden fields. All right, because there's always, everybody loves JavaScript for some reason. So instead of doing a direct post, they're going to post it to a JavaScript, and the JavaScript's going to turn it into a redirect, into a get, and then get to the page. Why? I have no clue. What's the future of code security? All right. The reason why most of you people came to the Owasp conference is to find out, you know, what are the latest and greatest things going on in code security? You know, what are the best tools? What are all the projects that Owasp's doing? As you've probably seen downstairs, the number of projects that we're doing is doubling every year. After this conference, I'm sure it's going to just completely double because this is our largest conference so far. Okay. How many of you people threat model all your applications? No one. Threat modeling is probably one of the most important things. Why? All right. As much as I hate to say it, the one thing I hate about every scanner, it just makes up its own rating. All right. There's nothing behind the rating in an app scanner. There's nothing behind the rating. Well, there's something a little behind the rating in source code analysis. But app scanners, it's like you have a cross-site scripting. All right. Oh, it's a medium issue. But hey, that's the login page, and I just put an iframe over the login page. Why is it only a medium issue? All right, because it's built that way. That's what it says in the Access database running that tool. Okay? You know, so that's why I suggest you threat model your apps, all right? And then you build your rating system around threat modeling the apps, sort of like how CVSS does, all right? Part of the whole rating system is what is the overall threat of that application, you know, quantitative or qualitative, all right? And then develop an effective security practice. How often do you do testing? Is your testing just for a check mark, all right? Check marks are done a dime a dozen. I get calls from people saying, yeah, can you test my application in a day for $2,500? It's like, what good's a day gonna be? It's not. I had one test I had to do. How many of you use Remedy? Remedy is a huge application, all right? Guess how much time I had to do this project? System and application, 4 days. And that included reporting, all right? Remedy is huge. You're not even gonna touch the surface of all the potential vulnerabilities in that time frame. All right, that's why you need to keep an effective log of all your applications, how many transactions, how many pages, the threat, everything associated with that application, who works on it, you know, any documentation. Most people don't have documentation. Where do you find most of your vulnerabilities? How many of you have ever looked in documentation for vulnerabilities? All right, you'd be surprised what you find in the documentation. All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
My name is Matthew, and I'm from Boston area, and I'm basically a web developer.